Hello there guys and welcome back to the channel. So in today's video we are going to be talking about Dani Moonstar and well, this is going to serve as her guide, highlighting the positives and also highlighting the negatives, some rotations, gameplay and some issues. And before we go any further, let me be brutally honest. I by no means consider myself to be like extremely skilled player or anything of the sort. But I do feel that there are quite a lot of issues with Dany, and she has extremely demanding playstyle to play her well for fights that aren't like vanilla Winter Soldier. And I'm going to explain that in a bit. But let's break down the positives of Dany. So she does have access to Falter, which means that you can force opponents to miss. You have alternate openings. You can use those Falter to land heavy attacks. And that is cool. You can use them to get guaranteed safe intercepts. It's always a nice ability to have. She does have access to passive slow, which is amazing because they cannot be shrugged off by nodes like Mighty Charge or some other skill shruggers. She does have quite large DPS in full rotation when everything goes perfectly. Like, if you have an appropriate relic, which is also quite important, because whether she crits or doesn't on level 2 is super important to her damage output, so it is somewhat RNG reliant. But if you have the right relic and the rotation goes perfectly, she does have high DPS. She can bypass miss, which is something that a lot of people don't know. That is the fact that Neuroshock is a new debuff that does in fact bypass miss and deals energy damage. And then we have Heal Block versus Skilled Champions, because she does have unique ability to her Neuroshock. In general, it is not preventing opponents from regenerating, but it's kind of like that Stealth Suit Spider-Man slow, where if you have a slow on opponent, then Stealth Suit Spider-Man also bypasses miss, for instance. And this is a similar ability where you can heal block Skilled Champions with your Neuroshocks. Deals with cheat death mechanics, which is also awesome in principle. You can basically bypass indestructibles, immortalities. That's quite cool. And obviously you can bypass Nick Fury's second life too. Now, negatives. I'm gonna keep it relatively concise there, but there are more than that, and there are quite a lot of issues. Even if I don't list many points, those are very big points. And Dany, in my opinion, is without a doubt a champion that absolutely needs a rework. So, the biggest issue is honestly super short timers and stressful play. All of her effects just don't last long enough in real life scenarios. If you're going up against a Winter Soldier or a very basic, simple, straightforward opponents, yeah, cool, fun. You can get your level 1, level 2 rotation in relatively easily. There's not much to worry about. But in reality, when you need to deal with some unstoppables or some evades or bait out more annoying special attacks, and if AI doesn't want to throw it, then it just goes very wrong very frequently, which you can see later in the video. And it is an extremely stressful playstyle. Now, she also has her DPS entirely reliant on her level 1, level 2 perfect rotation in time, which means that if you are not free to go for level 1, level 2 rotation for whatever reason, like some sort of power inhibition, or for instance, the fact that you need to maintain your slow, her DPS falls off the cliff quite drastically. She doesn't do much damage at all on her base hit, and also special attacks on their base do not do a lot of damage if you haven't ramped them up properly with maximum prowess, 5 passives, 5 active, with the energy vulnerability, with the 5 neural arrows. So there's a lot of required of you to set up, get that high damage output. And it really does feel extremely finicky. In any tricky fight, again, not fighting Winter Soldier, not fighting Captain Marvel, not fighting like Gamora or Deadpool. When you're going up against Korgs, Killmongers, Nick Furies, Hercules, everything like that, it always feels like you are really, really forcing yourself to get through that fight. It's just difficult and hard. And I am not saying that we shouldn't have high difficulty, high skill cap champions. I'm saying is she's not worth it. That's about it. And then damage extremely reliant on right relic and crits. No immunities, recall compatibility, or defensive value. That's also not great. Some neutral things. She does benefit from disorient nodes like Hard Knock Life, because then she gets her illusions basically automatically and quicker, so you don't need to worry about your 10 combo count. Damage is a mix of physical and energy, as in like all of her damage comes from physical hits, and then some of her special attack bursts and extra damage on her arrows is an energy damage, which again, in my opinion, to be honest, is kind of like the worst mix of both. Because in instances like this, in competitive situations, for instance, you cannot freely attack somebody like Korg. You still really need to be mindful of your basic attacks. And then, for example, you cannot use your special attacks against somebody like, I don't know, Human Torch or whatnot, because that's energy and that will still build up the smolders, for instance. Or, you know, against Havocs, for instance. Again, your physical attacks, fine, but then specials go on energy and you do get the plasmas built on you. So there's quite a lot of... This is, I think, the worst setup for a champion. Like, either you do energy, either you do physical, or either even other way around is fine. Your basic attacks are kind of like energy, and then specials can be physical. I think that's even much better. Also, only Neuroshock champion in-game at the moment, and Neuroshock is a new damage over time effect. It is energy damage, which means that against champions with high energy resistance, it will do less damage. Champions with negative or low energy resistance, it will do more damage. So, there we go. So let's check out some gameplay. And let's take a look at Dani Moonstar. So first, obviously, the mandatory Winter Soldier fight, just to showcase the rotation. The idea is to get to 10 hits in your combo meter, then you gain an illusion. Once you have an illusion, you need to hold your block, and when opponent strikes your block, they will be passively faltered. Once that happens, every time they miss, you get one Neuroshock arrow, and every time you strike them, you gain a prowess charge. If you activate special attack whilst that falter is still active, those prowesses get converted into passives, and you can still earn another set of 5 regular active prowesses. As we can see, level 1 got us slow and energy vulnerability, and now our job is to race to level 2. Even in fight like this, you can see that the slow already fell off, but energy vulnerability is still active. And now I have pitch perfect setup level 2 with 5 neural arrows, which means we're doing quite a lot of burst damage on our level 2. We had the 5 passive, 5 active prowesses, we had energy vulnerability still active. That is perfect rotation for Dani Moonstar, and that is a rank 5 6-star, by the way. So if you do want to learn basically how to use her, this initial setup was picture perfect. There's nothing to take or add from it, and now I'm going for level 1 just to kind of finish off. Add 5 neural arrows again, and we can see that he's ticking away. Those neural arrows last for 8 seconds, which is again abysmal duration for debuff. That is super important, and you can only gain on special attacks. But we're going to cover that later. So here is very, very solid, perfect, pretty much Dani Moonstar fight. Nothing to scoff at. Move on to the next showcase, and this is going to be just your Deadpool. But again, keep in mind that this is a rank 5 Dani Moonstar. Because, well, I'll be honest, I primarily ranked her up for prestige at the time, because she was the only champion that I could rank up to improve my prestige. And it was a bit of a new champion hype as well, but either way, I do not recommend taking her to rank 5. I'll be brutally honest. You're better off ranking Surfer. Surfer is much better as a champion. Okay, anyways. So here against Deadpool, again, we went for our level 1. We have our slow, energy vulnerability. We got the 5 neural arrows. I dropped my level 2 just in the nick of time. I have all my prowesses set up, and Deadpool's dead. So level 1, level 2 rotation killed the Deadpool, but keep in mind, we barely killed him, and that's 160k, which is not a full Valgrant's health pool, and that was a rank 5, so it's not super impressive either. And damage output is much, much better with recall masteries, but she really isn't recall mastery friendly because she has no immunities or way to mitigate the damage that you take. And here we're kind of going to see when something goes slightly wrong. Well, first things first, he's gonna refuse to throw his special for a bit, but you know, that's perfectly fine because we still haven't started our rotation. That's alright, I'm getting in a few more hits, so here I'm getting my miss, and here he just dexed out of my combo. That's sweet when that happens, because AI is recently supercharged as well. So I basically had no other choice but to build up to my level 2 instead. And here I'm going to activate my level 2 without the energy vulnerability, still with otherwise full ramp up though. But here we can see that if nothing crits, the damage is far from impressive. And again, that energy vulnerability would have improved our damage output quite significantly. But, you know, it just didn't happen because he dexed out of my hits after that phase. And I would have basically activated a suboptimal special attack. And here I go for my second level 2, and we're still going to finish fight. And it's not like super bad here. But this is where the somewhat positive news ends. Again, when you bring her in a relatively straightforward fight, it goes fine, and she's a cool character to play, and she's enjoyable. When you bring her in harder fights, though, there's so much to keep in mind. For instance, this Korg fight. She is a mutant character. In theory, she should be quite good against Korg, and she kind of is. Because you do have your falters, where you can get guaranteed intercepts, you can do your light hit combos, so you can get rid of rock stacks relatively easily. But at the beginning of the fight, you still need to find your openings. Because your hits are physical, you have no protection against your parry stun shrug-offs, which basically means you either need to eat the medium hit damage at least once at the beginning, or you need to be good at light intercepting and stuff like that. So, I will purposely show this fight because, I'll be honest here, I tried like 15 times and I screwed up at one point or another, pretty much in every single one of those fights. And that can be my fault because I'm an awful player, or it could be the fact that there's just so much that you need to do right in these fights. So here I go for my first level 1. We're going to activate the slow Neuroshock, but we're going to build up. Another thing that I realized, going for level 1 in this Korg matchup, and again, unless everything goes perfectly fine, is pretty much pointless because I almost never, I had like 15-20 attempts at this fight. Not once I managed to build up to my level 2 and line up everything perfectly to a point where I could capitalize from that Neuroshock. Sorry, from that energy vulnerability. We can see that energy vulnerability there pretty much expired. And my level 2, well, I'm almost ready for my level 2, but not quite. So I'm gonna again, so that level 1 entire thing was useless. I might as well just went up for level 2 and accept the fact that I will never get the improved damage, which kind of doesn't feel right, especially against skill champion. And here again, we get in that light intercept, everything's fine. I want to bait out at level 1, so he is going down, and I am going to mess up somewhere at the end here again. And I think that is going to happen. Oh, yeah, because I was holding block and Korg randomly just decided to throw his special attack in my block, and that special attack was unblockable, and I immediately lost my illusion. So it's just one very small example of, she definitely can do Korg well, but it is not going to be super fast or super easy time, for sure, because again, quite a few things can go wrong in matchups like that. And I think we're gonna showcase that pretty much the best near future. So here I'm just going to finish off. But, hey, killed that Korg, rank 4 Korg. But still, it really is not an easy fight. Next up, let's say somebody like Hercules. Now, Hercules is far from the hardest offender to go up against, but obviously we know that in Battlegrounds, if you play Battlegrounds, the immortality is a very effective time waster at times, and it's cool that she can completely ignore it. That's like one of her key selling points in her SIG abilities that mark passive. It means you can basically imagine that immortality doesn't exist. There is a big problem with this fight, or several rather. Number one is the fact that you need to end up eating quite a lot of block damage, or again, launch suboptimal special attacks and lose a ton of damage output in order to avoid him throwing level 1. Because if Hercules throw level 1, then, well, he's gonna bypass miss. Second point is illustrated right here. Hercules will frequently infuriate you, and you're not immune to ability accuracy reduction, so we can see that I activate my special attack, and my damage is absolutely poop, and I'm not gaining any prowesses during that special attack, and that's because of Infuriate. So, on top of everything else in this fight, Not only you need to stress about building up your neuroshocks and your prowesses and making it time for energy vulnerability and everything else, you also need to make sure that Hercules doesn't get to use his level 1s, otherwise you cannot even begin to use your rotation. And you also need to make sure that whenever you do attack, you're not infuriated, or all of that ramp up is effectively going to be wasted. So this is just like a perfect example where it's a fight where she should be really, really good and efficient, but in reality this fight took like 3+ minutes and I would have been better off using pretty much any other relatively decent champion and just waiting out that immortality. It's cool that she can switch it off, but she's still not a good option. Really isn't. So eventually I do get that Hercules down, and it's kind of cool to see that the immortality gets destroyed, but you can see here in a second, you know, takes us forever. And now he activates his level 1.
I have started to keep an open mind on
that. And come on. I'm gonna hit a block a couple of times, I think, or take some block. Here you go. Mark passive. He dead. Now let's go up against another matchup where she should be working amazing. This is one of the deep dive advertised matchups. Now, if she is awakened and high sig, she can prevent Nick Fury's second life, and she can be one of the fastest Nick Fury counters. When she was released, by the way, I'm going to pause it. When this champion was released, people were saying that Nick Fury belongs in the trash can of history because now we have a super fast direct counter and Nick Fury is not going to be a good defender anymore. Let's inspect the reality of it. 1, you cannot ever let Nick Fury use a special one, because if he does, he's going to go above 5 charges, and if he ever goes above 5 charges, he's going to bypass miss. So, probably, despite her falters and everything else, quite likely will end up taking some block damage anyways, or at the very least, you really do need to be careful that he does not use that. Here we again had a nice AI issue, where we got parried from our face, but here is the perfect example of we killed it just in time. So it worked out, but it's not super smooth fight anyways. Again, keep in mind, you need to push him to level 2. Okay, let's say, had I not gotten parried after I tried to utilize my phase mechanic and AIs on steroids, this would have been a perfect fight. But I went and I thought, I can do better. Let's record a perfect fight against Nick Fury again. Let's push him to level 2s. Let's squeeze in that perfect rotation, because if there is a way I can make Dani Moonstar look great, it should be this fight. Right? So I have very good build up here. Solid, you know, some neuro arrows. I do have that energy vulnerability. I want to get to my level 2 and basically do it as fast as I can, and then deny him that second life. That will feel so sweet and satisfying. It's going to be great. So let's see what happens. So I want to bait out his level 2. I'm baiting out his level 2, and again, just because he doesn't want to throw his level 2, I'm going to lose my energy vulnerability and significant amount of my damage output. Just so we know. But okay, fine, whatever. I'm dropping my level 2. Hey, why did he get his second life? How come that happened? And obviously, if Nick Fury does enter second life, it becomes incredibly hard to deal with, because again, he's going to go above those 5 charges. His charges are paused, he cannot miss, and you cannot access proper ramp. But yeah, why did he get his second life though? Well, that happens because I did not have any neuroshocks active on Nick Fury. The problem with neuroshocks is that they last only 8 seconds, and I can only get neuroshocks via my special attacks. Which means that if more than 8 seconds have passed since I activated my level 1 or level 2 until the Nick Fury dies, he is going to enter his second life. Also means that in most of the fights where you do want to basically go for the level 2 and do the damage to get Nick Fury down quickly, If you just so happen to be, let's say, unlucky enough and your level 2 kills Nick Fury before your very last hit, then he's still gonna enter second life. So what you need to do is activate your level 2, hope it doesn't kill Nick Fury, and then try to kill him in 8 seconds. That's how, and then I figured I'll try it out again just to see. And pretty much exactly the same thing happened. Now here's sweet, I'll ramp up, everything's cool. This time around I'm full health, I still have my energy vulnerability. Best run yet. This is the best. Oh wait, Nick Fury is in second line. And again, obviously, with practice and experimentation, knowing, exactly how much you can damage him and what special attacks to go in what order and stuff like that, you can bypass Nick Fury's second life, but it's extremely finicky process. And then, just again, kind of like a showcase that, for instance, she does have that passive slow, which is a best form of slow that you can have. The problem with that passive slow, well, number one is that, you still need to get to that level 1, but okay, lots of champions have that issue. Second problem is that, as we saw here, just before I threw my special attack, you also need to, because that passive slow does not activate at the beginning of the special, so they still have a chance to evade out of it. All that put aside, now I do have my passive slow, but you can see that it's going to be falling off soon. So what I need to do, I need to activate another level 1. So I did make a little mistake there, but that's okay. So, okay, we reapplied the slow. Let's try and finish the fight out. Like, oh wait, that passive slow is going to expire again. So what do I need to do? I need to activate my level 1, which means that if you actually want to use the utility that she has there, you pretty much have to forego your big damage special attack, because her level 1 does not hit hard, and those neuroshocks don't do too much damage either. So that is Dani Moonstar. And if you take a look at which matchups she can and cannot do, I'm actually kind of even giving these matchups to her begrudgingly. Can she do Korg? Yes. Is she a great option for Korg or the best? If you're very, very skilled, I mean, they're still going to be better, but not for most. Against Killmonger and Atuma, yeah, no, she doesn't really have anything going on for those. Another hype issue for her is that her damage output extremely depends on whether her special attacks crit. But a lot of champions like Korg and Killmonger both have actual critical resistance, so you're much more unlikely to crit against them. Nick Fury is advertised as like the destroyer Nick Fury, but I just showed that far from guaranteed, and that is kind of the idea. Whether she can't do these hard defenders, like, she has no real good chance against like Dominos or Toads, or she's just not great against them. Even if she can kind of squeeze in to do those fights, she's far from ideal. And where I gave her like these yes marks for like Jessica Jones because of the slow, Spider-Ham, Mr. Fantastic because of the slow. Again, you can do those matchups, but you're not going to have the damage output. You'll shut down their waves, sure, but again, you're going to have to forego the damage output. And yeah, so much of the stuff she either cannot do against the actual defenders where difficulty is involved, or it's far from ideal. In some of, again, I put those asterisks there on purpose because, as I said before, I tried 15 times to get like a perfectly smooth Korg fight there. And it definitely can be done. I have seen it done. I have done it in the past at some point as well. But I'm far more likely to mess it up, just like a lot more experienced players are from what I have seen in Battlegrounds, let's say. So, going back to Dani, reality is she does need a tune-up. Virtually all of her timers need significant extension. Like slow needs plus 10-15 seconds. if you actually want to have access to it and do some damage. Energy vulnerability needs another plus 20, 15 seconds, something like that. Because most of the fights that energy vulnerability actually expires, you can get to your level 2 if the opponent is like extremely straightforward and cooperates with you throwing special attacks. And perhaps most importantly, her neuro shock debuffs from her arrows need the duration like doubled or tripled, or she needs some sort of way how to inflict them on basic attacks or something. Because yeah, if she's advertised as primarily destroying Nick Fury, I'm gonna tell you straight up, in more fights that I have tried than not, you fail to prevent the second life because things just don't line up. So that's Dani Moonstar, and I'm sorry guys, I know that a lot of people are hyped about her, and you guys are perfectly free to go to comment section, tell me that I suck, I just don't know how to use her, she's amazing, she's insane, all that is good. I have, again, as I said, I'm not pretending to be the most skilled player, but this is my honest opinion. This is a champion that got far more attention than she deserved, and she desperately, in my opinion, needs help from Kabam to make her up at least somewhat viable. And even if you do all the changes I mentioned, double or triple the neuroshock duration, double basically slow and energy vulnerability durations, even then she isn't going to be particularly insane. You know, she's not going to be an Archangel. But at the very least, then she could be playable. Let me know what you guys think, and I'm going to catch you guys soon. Bye-bye. Hello there guys, and welcome back to the channel. So we have all the information